I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Ingresso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And today, we're going to be talking about buyer personas and how you can focus right into that buyer persona to help you sell more and market better. I'm excited to have with me my friend, Mr. Jim Kraus. He is the president of the Buyer Persona Institute. Jim, welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, Mario, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So excited to have you here with us. Do me a favor. Some folks may know you, some folks may not, Jim. So give a little background about yourself and the Buyer Persona Institute, and then I got a very special question I want to ask you.
Sure, yeah. So Jim Kraus, I'm the president of Buyer Persona Institute. We've been around for about 15 years. Del Ravella was actually the founder of Buyer Persona Institute. Her and I worked together for a number of years. She's retired now, so I'm kind of running Buyer Persona Institute. We're focused on, really at the end of the day, trying to develop buying insights to help marketers and sellers take all the guesswork out of their activities, essentially, so they can better influence buyers. I mean, that's our sole focus, is to make marketers and sellers' job easier and to enable them to do their jobs better.
Fantastic. And I also understand that you are a book author too. Am I wrong?
Yeah, so the first edition of the Buyer Personas book came out about 8 or 9 years ago. And we have a second edition that we're really excited about. It's coming out this summer. We actually just finished the manuscript about a month ago, so we're putting some final touches on it. So that'll be out in the summer. Should be available Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, etc. So if anybody's interested in what we're talking about today and you want to dive even deeper into how to develop impactful buyer personas and how do you use them to improve marketing and sales, definitely pick up a copy in the summer.
So I'm excited for this conversation because we have an entire section in our training program for Fly Message, the Fly Learning application. And we actually have a 90-minute training module that teaches reps and sales leaders how to go about transforming their individual profile to attract the target buyer persona. And we have an entire section on buyer persona and really mapping that process out. So this is going to be a great conversation. I'm excited. But before we get into it, I do have a very special question, and I'm looking for something juicy, Jim, and give us something good. Tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles.
I wouldn't say nobody knows about it, but only people that I'm friends with or live in my community know about. And I'm a personal trainer on the side. That's my side hustle, so to speak. So I do online personal training. So when I'm not doing this, which is what I'm doing most of the time, I actually train people online. So that's a real passion of mine, and it's gets me out of this for a little while and lets me focus on really helping people. So it's something that I enjoy and been doing for a number of years now.
Wait, so what do you mean by training people online? Like you're in a Zoom session and you're helping them to work out, or what?
No, so what I do is I use an app. There's different apps now where I can literally write programs for different clients that have different fitness goals, depending on their age, their health, what they're trying to do. And I can write programs for them, and they basically are able to, on their mobile phones, able to follow these programs. And they have videos and written advice. And what I find is busy professionals love it, or even non-professionals, right? Because it's everybody uses their phone now, and it's a lot cheaper than using an in-person trainer, but you still get all the benefits of it. So
I love it. So you might be my personal Peloton in the palm of my hands.
Exactly.
Very good. Good. Well, hey, thanks for joining me today. And let's get into some meat and the thick of things here and talking about buyer personas. And this is so important to really nail this topic down as a seller and as a sales leader, and certainly as a marketer, is understanding who your buyer persona is. And in addition to the buyer persona, understanding the business problems that you're solving for that buyer persona. And that's where we fall short at quite often in the sales realm. So First off, you and I were talking earlier, and it was something that was interesting was the number one misconception people have about buyer personas. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So if you take away what I always tell people when I talk about buyer personas, and, I talk about them at events and write about them all the time. It's the whole focus of our book is, the traditional definition of buyer, when somebody says buyer personas, what most people think of will be a profile of a particular individual or a role, right? So, we've got our CIO buyer persona, or our marketing manager buyer persona, or our, if you're talking about consumers, it could be your Midwestern father who has XYZ possession. Those are all profiling specific roles, right? So that's fine. But our definition of buyer persona is a little different. Our definition is really defining specific buying insights around a specific buying decision. So what I mean by that is, if you think about the goal of a buyer persona, the fundamental goal of a buyer persona is to help you market and sell better, right? It's to help you get to know your audience better. But the key thing is, though, when you're talking about marketing and sales, at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is influence a particular buying decision. That's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to get somebody or an organization to consider you. You're trying to get an individual or organization to, as they go through that, they're looking at different competitive alternatives. You want them to continue to say, hey, these folks are competitive. We want to keep moving down this sales chain with it. We might eliminate some people we're thinking about, but these guys seem to really get us and seem to be offering something of value, right? So at the end of the day, you're trying to influence buyers, right, and get them through the sales funnel into a decision, obviously. So if you think about that, the key thing, the biggest misconception is a buyer persona is specific buying insights around a buying decision. It is not simply a profile of an individual or role, because a profile of an individual role gives you no information about how do you influence that particular individual in a specific buying decision that they're making. So that's a really key distinction.
All right, so let me take that back. So it's the specific buying insights that influence how a buyer persona will purchase. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah. So let me try it this way. So let's say hypothetically you're somebody that market or sells CRM software, right? Pick any type of product or service that you sell. What you really want to know is, so let's say you find out that the marketing professionals in an organization is one of your target markets. Now you could do a traditional buyer persona where you're identifying all kinds of profiling characteristics of a quote unquote, let's say, marketing director, right? And you may find out they are a certain average age, certain average income, have this type of education. You may even know their overall priorities and some of their big challenges and what keeps them up at night. That's fine, but it doesn't really tell you how do you sell that CRM software. So what a buyer persona is based on a buying decision. In this case, we would do a buyer persona on a CRM buying decision. And we would find out 5 specific things about that CRM buying decision that would make up what your buyer persona is. So here's the 5 things that you want to know. So if you think about a buyer persona, it's got 5 parts. Part number 1 is what we call priority initiatives. Priority initiatives are triggers. These are what got this organization or individual first starting to even look for your particular product or service, right? So they may have had a challenge for any number of years, months, weeks. What was the thing that said, hey, we got to do something about this. What we're doing now isn't working. What are those priority initiatives, right? What are the 4, 5, 6 things that makes a CRM buyer actually even start looking, right? Number 2, success factors. That's the second part of your persona. Success factors are outcomes. They are the benefits or outcomes that your CRM buyers, using the same example, want from this investment. What are the most important things that they need to be able to point to and say, we made this investment and now we're going to be able to do X, Y, Z. Those are your success factors. That's number 2. The third part of your buyer persona is what we call perceived barriers. Perceived barriers are really important because they're all the concerns and trepidations that your prospective buyers will have about making this investment or making with a particular buyer, right? So one of the biggest obstacles for sales professionals is getting a buyer to get past the status quo, right? So you want to know what are all the things that are causing them concern and trepidation, particularly when you're talking about B2B sales and, using the CRM as an example, or any software for that matter. There's going to be concerns that the buyer is going to have moving away from the status quo. They don't want to mess things up, right? Maybe what they have now isn't perfect, but what are the things that are causing them concern? What are also the characteristics of providers that are causing them concern where they're saying, Not really sure. I think I'm going to drop them off my list, right? So that's number 3. What are your perceived barriers? Fourth one is decision criteria. That's the fourth part of your persona. And decision criteria is all the questions that your buyers are going to ask to evaluate their competitive alternatives. So think of this as kind of middle, bottom of the sales funnel type stuff, where they're now kind of in their quote unquote buying journey. They're getting smarter about what's out there. They're getting smarter about the providers, the features, and now they're getting really specific about what are the things they're going to be evaluating on. Decision criteria is what are those questions. And the fifth and final piece of your persona, again, we'll use the CRM as the example, is what does a typical buyer's journey look like? So what are the steps in the process? What are the key influencers in that process? And what are the information sources that they use? So now, if you have those 5 pieces of information, triggers, desired outcomes, purchase barriers, decision criteria, and buyer's journey for your specific product and service, think about how valuable that information will be if you're a marketing or sales professional. And now all the things that will enable you do far more impactful than if you had a profile of a influencer in that decision.
Go back to the 5th one. What was the 5th one again? The
buyer's journey.
The buyer's journey.
Yeah, so that's 3 key things. It's what are the key steps in the process, right? So I'll just keep using the CRM example, but for anyone listening, whatever product service that you sell or sell, put your, think about it that way. What are the key steps? Like, what are the key things they do? How do they figure out who they're going to consider? How do they winnow down their options? What information sources do they use to get that information? Who's involved in the process in their organization, and how are they involved? Who are the ones that are really vetting the different competitive alternatives that they're looking at? Who are the people that are involved in that kind of final, sign-off decision? So really just painting a picture of what that buyer's journey looks like.
Gotcha. And so, wait, I heard you say there are 3 the 3 things under the buyer's journey: key steps in the process, and what was the last 2?
Steps, influencers, and information sources.
Okay. Information sources. And how would, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but how would a marketer or enablement professional or salesperson or rep, how would you end up finding out the one? I get the the initiatives, I get the success factors, I get the perceived barriers, the decision criteria, what questions they're going to ask, but the buyer's journey, key steps in the process, the influencers and information sources. How would one figure those things out?
Yeah, there's really only one way to do it, and that is do in-depth interviews with recent buyers. And let me define that a little bit, because the devil's in the details, right? So let me first define what a recent buyer is. So a recent buyer isn't your current customer. It could be, but it's not necessarily your current customer. You want to do it, let's say, again, we'll stick with the CRM example for consistency. So let's say we're doing a CRM buyer persona. What we want to do is we want to go out and find people that made that exact same type of buying decision in the last 3 to 6 months. We go up to 12 months sometimes. Someone that a company that has an individual within a company that has actually gone through it, right? We want to find those folks and we want to do in-depth interviews with them. The interviews typically will last 30 or 40 minutes long, and they're not like a traditional, some people maybe have heard of qualitative research and quantitative research, right? The interviews that you want to do is kind of like, think about it, what a journalist might do, right? So you're talking to somebody, let's say you're talking to somebody that bought a CRM software for their company, who was involved in that decision for their company 3 months ago. What you want to do is you want to understand their full story, right? They have a story to tell. Their story is their complete buyer's journey from the moment they had an initial need for that or trigger that got them to start looking until they finally made a final decision. You want to interview them, find out what was the initial thing. There's only really one scripted question you want to ask in the interview at the very beginning. We always ask them, take me back to the day when you first decided that you needed a CRM solution. Tell me what happened. And from there, you want to prompt, probe, and question to understand everything that happened, right? So we ask questions like, tell me about the providers that you first considered. How did you even figure out who you were going to consider? Tell me a little bit about what you did to even come up with that list. Right? What was important? Were there certain pieces of information that were important or things that really made an impact on you when you first started learning about CRM software and the different providers and the different options that you had? Oh, great. So, at any point, did you, you mentioned that you were looking at 10 different providers. Did you narrow that list down? Oh, you narrowed it down to 5. tell me a little bit, how did you go from 10 to 5? What were some of the things that the five providers that you stopped considering? What were some of the reasons you stopped considering them, right? What about the other 5 providers? What kept them in the race, so to speak, right? And you prompt and probe, you question, and all we're trying to do is understand that entire journey. And one of the tricks is really trying to understand how they winnow down their choices. When you get done with that story, when you get down to the final decision, you will have all the insights you need for all 5 areas I just mentioned, right? Because now you're going to know what triggered it. You're going to ask them what they were trying to get from this investment. They're going to tell you all about that. They're going to tell you about all their concerns and their fears and trepidations. They're going to tell you about all the things that were really important in the decision process and how they winnowed down their choices and made a final decision. And by virtue of them telling you their story and not even forcing it, you're going to know their buyer's journey, because they're going to self-identify everything that happened. They're going to say, hey, we did a Google search, and then we talked to our peer network. We took a look at Gartner. We're capturing all this stuff. You do a series of those interviews, right? So you don't just do one. You do a series of those interviews, and then you look for patterns in the data, right? You record them, you transcribe them, and from those, that's how you pull out insights in each of the 5 areas. So talking to recent buyers by far is the best way to do it, because they are the experts in this case, right? They went through it. They're not guessing. They actually went through it, and they went through it just a little while ago.
Makes a lot of sense. This requires a certain, obviously, amount of work that would be on the, I would assume, marketing and or sales enablement. But I think it's quite obvious. But I'm going to ask the obvious question, which is, why should we care about this? That is marketing and sales, about the buyer persona. Like, what's in it for the individual, and how does it impact the individual and seller?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, think about it, right? So when you're in a competitive selling situation, let's take a step back now. Let's talk about high consideration buying decisions. By high consideration buying decisions, I mean decision where a buyer is looking at multiple alternatives. There's probably multiple influencers involved. There's a degree of risk in the decision, right? They're excited about the upside, but they don't want to screw things up either, right? So that could be, it could definitely be B2B. It could be B2C as well. So think about those types of high consideration decisions. Put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, right? If you're a buyer, what are you going to be? You're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious. We've got all kinds of great data on these high consideration buying decisions from a number of organizations and studies that show that buyers are very anxious. This is not easy. They have a lot of information coming at them. It's not easy to distinguish one provider from the next. They all start sounding the same. A lot of these features and capabilities, this is the first time they've ever made this decision, or maybe they haven't made it in a while, right? So it's not like they're coming to the table as experts, right? They're coming and saying, trying to figure out like, what is even out there. So what happens is the providers and the sellers and the marketers that do the best job of aligning with buyers as quickly as possible and giving them exactly the information they need in the exact places and steps in their journey that they need are going to have a significant advantage. Think, as an example, if you're one of these buyers for CRM and you're just getting out there and you're looking at alternatives and you're allowed some little trepidation, and you go to one website and it has a bunch of, value propositions and messages that talk about optimizing performance and improving efficiencies and blah, blah, blah. And you've got another website for somebody that did a buyer persona like this, and they literally in their website, again, as an example, address every success factor that you have. It's like, here's the 6 things you're going to achieve. Here's how are you going to do it. And here's our case studies and our references that talk to all 6, right? Oh, and this other company also has all of the decision criteria. They did their buyer persona. There's 8 key decision criteria. They already know them, right? You're going to go to their website, and guess what? They're going to have all that information, very highly credible, right? Sourced, maybe benchmarked against things, so that when you're the buyer, what are you going to do? You're going to start building confidence. You're going to start having a lot of trust, right? So buyers have all this information coming at them. You don't have a lot of time to get it right. You want to connect with them. You want to start building that trust factor as quickly as you can. From a marketing and seller's perspective, that's invaluable. And that's the value of the buyer persona. The best way to think about it is eliminating all the guesswork in your marketing and sales. You're not guessing about what you think is important to buyers. You know what's important to them going in.
So the key components of the buyer persona then would be these 5 elements that you just talked about. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And if there was only one that you had to focus on first, to start really say you're a new sales organization, 10 sellers, you're a smaller organization, you don't have a lot of traction going on in the market. Where do you start at first? Which one is the most important, or are they all equally important?
They're all important for different reasons, right? I mean, the key thing is if you're able to talk to recent buyers, or a minimum, try to talk to a few current customers if you can't get to recent buyers, and there's different ways about it. And we talk a lot about in the book about actually how to do this stuff. You can do those, but you really want to, as long as you have a discussion with a buyer or a customer and they articulate their full buyer's journey, you're going to be able to get all 5 of those areas. And the reason they're all important is because the priority initiatives, which are the triggers, and the success factors, which are the desired outcomes, is really kind of top of the funnel stuff, right? So if you're thinking about how you're marketing and how you're selling, what you're putting out there, what you're talking to prospective buyers about, if you get those first things right, that's going to give them an initial comfort level, because they're going to feel like, okay, these folks get me, right? They understand what I'm trying to get out of this. They understand why I'm even here in the first place talking to them. That gives me that initial comfort level. Then when you get to your perceived barriers and your decision criteria, those are things that are more, now they're in the journey, right? Now they're kind of in it, right? They're starting to learn some stuff, starting to get a little confused about some things, starting to form some opinions, right? So, but now if you have that information, now are you going to help, this is really going to help your conversion rate. So the first 2 might help you build that funnel. Those middle 2 that I just talked about, barriers and decision criteria, are going to help you once you get your buyers kind of in the door. How do you keep them going through that funnel and really converting them to business, right? And then the buyer's journey is the kind of thing that wraps it all together, right? So you have a view of, here's the 6 key steps in the buyer's journey. Now I have an idea about where I really need to show up, right? Where, do I need to be on a website? Do I need to have references? Do I need to have analysts saying good things about me? Do I need to be going to these conferences? That kind of thing.
So that makes total sense, especially coming from the marketing side. Let's drive that down now into the individual sales side. How does that impact me as a sales enablement professional or as a sales leader in terms of messaging, cadences, cold outreach, LinkedIn touch points, any of those types of things that are more the practical and tactical?
Yeah, in every conceivable way, it's going to help you, because this buyer persona will tell you everything that buyers care about. I mean, you will know everything. And for that particular decision. So again, if you're selling CRM software, I'm just sticking with that as an example, you're going to know, like, if you're just writing emails, right? You're doing email campaigns, you're developing sales pitches, sales proposals, you're developing talking points, coming up with what are like 5 or 6 things that I can have a conversation with a new prospect about. You're going to have all that information at your fingertips. You're going to know exactly the things that they really care about. One of the things that we encourage people that do these types of buyer personas, and our clients that we work with to do these buyer personas, is to develop sales talking points. And the way to do that is, most of the time, if you've got a certain product or service, there's going to be certain features or capabilities that you really kind of want to talk about, right? You've identified them as something you really want to push. It's your bread and butter. Maybe it's differentiating. A great exercise to do is take everything that your buyers want and need from your persona. So let's say you come up with 20 insights as an example, overlay what your company's capabilities are and your capabilities are, and find the intersection between those 2 things. You can find the intersection between what buyers want and what you're able to deliver really well. Now you can go out and talk to sellers in any type of medium and feel super confident that you've got something they're going to care about because you developed this persona. And not only that, you've done the homework to say, we've got some really strong capabilities and identified what can really answer all these buyer needs, right? So it just instills a lot of confidence when you have those conversations, because you're talking about something relevant to them. You're talking about something that you can do really well.
So what you just described is something very similar to what we do when we are teaching sales leaders and sales reps how to go about redoing their LinkedIn profile to attract their target persona. And oftentimes, of course, as a sales rep, when they're selling for a company of B2B sales, as we know, the statistic is 72% of B2B buyers look back at an individual's profile to see if they want to engage with that particular rep. And so there are 3 things that we want reps to understand and be able to articulate in their headline, in their about section, and in their experience section. And that is who you help, how you help, and what business problems you solve. And what you just said, I think encapsulates those three elements. You have to be able to identify who that specific buyer is, how you help them, and that is that alignment that you said between, where their business need is at and your product set. There is some overlap. There's going to be an overlap. There's that, inner circle right there. So how do you help them, and be able to articulate that in one sentence, and then the business problem that they specifically solve. Now, I watered it down into my terms. Am I off my rocker on that one?
No, you're dead on. That's a great way to use these insights. It's the beauty of it is that it takes away that guesswork, right? You don't have to guess that is your profile, as an example, is it off? Like, you'll know these are things they care about. So again, it builds that confidence, and then you can build off of that. As the profile is one thing, and you can build off of that.
Now, it's interesting, and I'm going to use Vengreso as a case study here. So if you think about who we are the creators of FlyMessage, and FlyMessage is a multifaceted product solution. We have a product-led growth side of the house, which is our individual knowledge worker, 1 billion knowledge workers, and we literally have every Tom, Dick, and Harry you could possibly think of, from an online digital pharmacist to a mortgage broker to a accounts payable person to an individual customer service rep, right? So you've got everybody utilizing FlyMessage, and majority of them are using it in a way that helps them to be able to write faster and to be able to get repeatable messages out and eliminate mundane tasks. So that's that side. Then we have our sales-led growth side of the house, and the sales-led growth side is arguably the strongest side of our revenue, where essentially individual sales reps from this product-led growth side who are using repeatable messages over and over and over again, they want to, we begin to see a trend. One person has it, that turns into 10, that turns into 20, that turns into 1,000, whatever the number is. And so that becomes an enterprise opportunity. And what we have layered on top of that is our education sales prospecting training program called Fly Learning. That's 14 hours worth of on-demand content. And we also have our text expander for those repeatable messages to reduce the mundane tasks. And then we also have our AI engagement tools for LinkedIn social media, as an example, writing social media content and actually writing AI or using AI to write your comments on a post. Okay, now you bundle that all together, and that becomes an entire solution for a seller's prospecting motion in their workflow. Now, the one challenge that we have, and I'd love for this to be let's talk about us as the use case, is my website geared towards the product-led growth side of the house that is a lead generation site for our sales-led growth? Or is it focused on, hey, my real buyer that brings in the bread and butter is definitely our sales line of business? Where does a company look at, in looking at Vengreso? We have two different buyer personas, sales and customer success, which represent 50% of our user base, and then everyone else, which represents all the knowledge workers. How do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, so for us, everything that we deal with is buying decision based, right? So I mean, that's kind of the center of our universe. So it could be both, really, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still trying to influence a particular buying decision. So, regardless of the solution or the mechanism, as long as you're understanding how somebody's making a particular decision about something that they're going to be spending money on, you could use it for either case, really.
Okay, I guess where I'm driving at is more towards, as a sales or marketer, you develop insights to create these types of personas. Now you want to take action to obviously improve marketing and sales performance. So how do you take action? Like, using us as a use case, how do you take action specifically targeted at, you've got really two different groups, and your website, that front page, that landing page, is it going to speak to everyone, or is it going to speak to like the big buyer that you're going after?
It depends. It depends whatever your key objective is, right? So if on the knowledge management side of the house, so that would be something where you would be really, if that's something you were focused on your website, you got to have a couple of different paths to it, right? But the reality is you want to be able to get those buyers on that train as quickly as possible, and then funnel them down through that particular cycle in terms of the different insights that the persona is delivering and what part of the sales funnel that they're in. So I don't know if it's an either or. It really kind of depends what the priority is. What we have a lot of times is we'll have clients that we work with who we spend a lot of time with them talking about where do they want to focus their buyer persona, because the answer is they could use it a lot of different places, right? And typically what they end up focusing on is two things. One is where is the revenue coming from, right? And that's where they say we're going to focus resources on developing these buyer personas based on where our revenue is coming from. Or alternatively, it's where do we not know something? Where is a place that we don't think we know enough about our buyers and those buying decisions? And then the third way they filter through is if it's something that they've got room to make some changes, right? If you've got something where you've already got your marketing and sales plays kind of baked, they're mature, maybe there's not a lot of room to change them for whatever reason, it's probably not a great place to do a buyer persona. To do this work for something where you are going to be focused on it, you're doing something new, marketing sales motions, or you're going to be making some changes, or there's some significant change in the market, for example, and the market looks a little bit different, that's another reason to focus there. So the way I guess I would answer it is it depends on how you prioritize it. There's no right or wrong answer, and different companies prioritize it different ways.
Got it. All right. So now we've developed the buyer persona. We've developed all these insights, gathered it. We have identified the 5 segments that you identified earlier. What action do I take as a marketer after developing the persona to improve marketing or sales performance?
Right. So we call those the 5 rings of buying insight, by the way. And again, that's just a name. So we need to put some name onto it, but that's what we call it. So the key thing is there's 2 things that we typically tell our clients to do, right? Number one is use this word adjustment, right? So there's never been a time where we've done a buyer persona or seen another company do a buyer persona, and it was everything they learned was a surprise, right? So if they've been in the market at all, it shouldn't come as a surprise. In fact, a lot of it should be confirming, right? It should add some new insights, but also some confirming insights. So the first thing we always recommend to do is to do an adjustment or a refinement, right? Look at your all your marketing and sales assets. Are there any kind of quick wins that you can do, right? As an example, we find out that based on the Prioritization success factors, we identify 4 or 5 things that are absolutely critical that buyers need to be able to achieve. If they're going to buy this solution, they need to be able to achieve these 4 things. That's a quick adjustment strategy. Go through all your marketing sales motions. Are there some quick things that you can do so that you can get in the market with those as quickly as possible? There's no reason to wait on those things. The second thing we always recommend them to do is to, and a lot of times they're going to do this. One of the reasons they want to do buyer personas in the first place is to really take a hard look at their positioning and their messaging in any kind of form, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, in any kind of form, and do that exercise I mentioned to you where you're overlaying what buyers want and need with your persona with what are your capabilities, and overlaying those 2 things, and then figuring out and then updating your messaging accordingly. That's a no-brainer. Update your messaging to do that. The other thing we recommend doing too is around case studies, case references, things like that. These insights will give you a lot of information about where do you want to focus your case studies and your references as far as you're building them, where you should be really focused on, because there's certain customers that are going to achieve certain things, other customers achieve others. You want to be focused on the ones tied to the buying insights that you developed in your persona, so that they're going to be relevant towards them. So those are some of the things that you can do.
Gotcha. Okay. And translate this down now to the individual sales leader. The things that you described sounds like marketing. I'm the sales leader. Buyer personas, marketing just spent a ton of money on this. Now as a sales leader, what am I expecting? What should I do next?
Yeah, so for sales, and this could either be sales alone or in partnership with marketing, one of the things I would definitely do is if you have sales playbooks, for example, or anything of that nature, I think you should definitely update some of your talking points, right? So if you've got something where here's things that you can start talking to prospects about, that's definitely something that you can update with these buyer persona insights, particularly if you do that overlay that I mentioned, right? So that's number one. Another thing you can do is with perceived barriers, you will identify what all the key objections that buyers will have, whether it's an objection to making the investment with anybody or an objection about a particular provider. You will know what those barriers are. You want to have an answer to as many of them, if not all of them, as you can. So as an example, I'll pick one, so one of the perceived barriers we often find in technology purchases, right, is we hear that there's a concern that a company, doesn't have, won't be able to integrate very well with the current technology that they have. If that's a barrier, right, that's a big concern. So that's something that you want to be able to proactively address. You want to arm your sales force with answers to all of that, right? Even before buyers bring them up and say, hey, one of the things that we know that, a lot of companies are concerned about it is, integration with their existing IT infrastructure. Let me talk to you a little bit about how we handle that and some of the successes we've had, right? You want to build those out, right? Because now the great thing about it is not only you addressing it, but you're proactively addressing it. That builds incredible trust with buyers because not only you're handling it, you're showing them that you know what they're concerned about, right? And then the other thing I would say is, on sales pitches, right? That's another great opportunity. Like if you've got your sales pitch, kind of what you were talking about with the buyer profile, you quickly want to, in your sales pitch, be able to articulate the key challenge and problems that buyers have so that immediately you're talking their language and you're like, oh, okay, they get me right away, right? They're getting points just for understanding me, right? Before you go into, here's everything my product can do and here's all the features and, flower hose with that. If you address all those and address some of their concerns with perceived barriers and then start getting into their decision criteria, now you're going to be able to methodically take them through, right, a place where they're going to really build trust in your capabilities. So those are all places that you can make some pretty quick impacts.
And part of this would be, looking at obviously the messaging, obviously that makes sense in terms of going after that, but then turning around and you've got to make that impact down to the individual seller. You're saying the right things. Who do you help? How do you help them? What business problem do you solve, right? Succinctly. And then you're looking for those cues. For example, do they understand the 1, 2, 5 business problems very specifically that your solution covers that the buyer has a need to? And do they understand that intersection point? And I think that's where probably a lot of sales leaders miss the mark at, if you would, in that regard.
Yeah, no question.
All right. So we're coming up here on time. I know that you've released the book Buyer Personas, and you're coming out with the new edition. You mentioned that early on. When is it coming out, and where can we get that if we want more information?
Yeah, so the updated and expanded edition is coming out probably July, August timeframe. It should be out on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, any of the the common platforms that you can buy books. And we're excited about it. We're basically, it will tell you exactly how to do these buyer personas, right? So we've been talking a lot about what's included in them and how to use them. We have a lot in the book about how do you actually go ahead and do that, right? In detail about how you actually can do one of these yourselves. We also have a couple of chapters on how you actually use these buyer personas. So some of the things we've been talking about, we articulate different ways you can use them. And then we go into some other topics as well about doing survey research to, enhance the insights and even more for folks that really get into that kind of stuff. We've added pieces to it compared to the first version as well.
Fantastic. And if somebody wants to connect with you, Jim, what's the best way to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so two places. One, feel free to visit buyerpersonas.com. Pretty easy to remember. We've got all kinds of information on our website. We've got buyer persona. We have free templates. We have examples. We have a master class that you can take if you're interested in doing one of these yourselves. Exactly how do you go about doing it? And the other place is LinkedIn. Feel free to LinkedIn and to me. We try to put out a fair amount of thought leadership around the notion of buyer personas and buying insights more broadly. So I'd love to connect with you that way as well.
And if you're looking to connect with Jim, it is Jim Kraus, Jim Kraus. And please make sure when you send him a connection request that you send a personalized connection request telling him, I heard you on the Modern Selling podcast. so that he knows where you're coming from, people. Please stop the chaos and sending out non-customized or no message whatsoever, personalized. Well, I guess if it's no message, you're not sending a personalized connection request. Just send a personalized connection request, for goodness sakes. Jim, I got one last question for you, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Oh, gosh. So many. Can I tell you two? Can I give you two?
Sure. Why not?
All right. So I'm a huge baseball fan. So Bull Durham is definitely one of them. Just a great baseball movie. And then I'd probably pick Shawshank Redemption would be my second. Both great movies.
I think the most common answer is Shawshank Redemption from all of our guests. This is our 7th season. We're 260 something episodes by the time this publishes, and that one definitely is at the top of the list. Jim, it's been fantastic having you on the show. For all of you listening in right now, hey, don't turn that dial quite yet. Listen to this very important message right now. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.